why do you think that there was like this perception of Dr. Oz as a radical in some way?
Because the Democrats and the media and the establishment apparatus and everybody loves to push lies, and a lot of people fall for it.
We just had a, let's just say, an exciting midterm, to say the least. Got a lot of attention, a lot of media coverage. What did you think going into it compared to the result we ended up getting?
Oh, I mean, obviously, I was hoping and expecting a lot better performance by Republicans compared to what we got.
Why do you think the performance was underwhelming?
I think there's a whole bunch of different reasons and factors. I mean, American politics is a very, very complex, complicated topic. The one thing that I know for sure is that there is no just one explanation. And I think anybody that says, oh, there's this, there's just one reason why this happened, or there's just this one factor that caused this to happen, or there's one thing that explains it all. It's like, no, there's a million different reasons and a million different factors that went into this.
Yeah,
and we all could talk about them. We all know what they are.
Immoral.
Yeah, I think we can generally kind of how you say, we can get some core components, but we can never explain everything. Because I don't think there's no polling data in the world that's going to be good enough to understand why every voter was motivated to come out, or exactly what got this county to get these many more votes. And a lot of these races are very close too, 500 votes. How are you going to be able to boil this down to that close? I do think it's possible to get some kind of main issues though. What would you say some main factors that led to this being, because usually in midterms the opposition party does very well. That's historically what happens. So this is outside of the historical precedent. Is what for me, I think some of the big factors was I think a lot of people underplayed how big abortion was still in the mind of many voters, especially in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. And I think that motivated a lot of Democrats to turn out, especially on states where it was on the ballot. What would you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think abortion just certainly played a big role. I think a lot of Republicans didn't turn out. I mean, the voter turnout rate was pretty low. Certainly nowhere near. I mean, for example, in Montana, we had over 80% turnout in 2020, and 75% turnout in 2018, and in this election, it was 60% or something. So I think a lot of people didn't turn out. I think abortion was a big factor. I think people are not feeling the economic pain as much as they might. I think a lot of Republicans obsessing about the elections being stolen is not helpful in multiple different ways.
You would say that concentrating on the 2020 election is, and here's my perspective on it. Obviously, I'm a libtard, right? So I'm a liberal, so I'm not an independent voter. But I always found 2020, outside of all the specifics of it, it kind of comes off the Republican Party is kind of a sore loser when you talk about it to a certain point. Even if you somebody believes that it's a valid argument, when you talk about it for 2 years after the fact, right? And some campaigns made it a real big linchpin, Carrie Lake, for example. I think a lot of independence voters are just it kind of comes off as whiny,
I'm sure there's lots of people that agree with that and think that. And it's not, you're not really, okay. So on one hand, you're not gonna get independents and Democrats to vote for you because they think it's insane. They think it's crazy when you say it. You're not looking forward. You're not actually proposing any solutions. I mean, sometimes people bring up solutions, but it is kind of looking backwards in a way. And then you're also then going to cause problems with conservatives and Republicans or people that do believe it, because why would anybody go vote if you're sitting there telling them that the elections are all rigged and stolen? So that's why I say it's not helpful in multiple ways. So I think that was a part of it. I think the Democrats' idea that Republicans are fascists and hate democracy, and this is gonna be the end of democracy, and Republicans are gonna end democracy, whatever that was, that sort of dark message that Joe Biden was sending. I think that obviously must have worked.
I was at actually Biden's last rally before the midterms, and during the rallies, this idea of defense of democracy was a constant thing he hit on. He had that defense of democracy speech that a lot of people said was tone deaf going into the elections. But Democrats I spoke to, and we flipped the governorship blue, but it wasn't like a massive achievement, right? Because we were going up against Stan Cox. He was not. Larry Hogan wouldn't even endorse him because of some of the things he said. But in Maryland and across a lot of states, this idea of defense of democracy was really important for Democrats and even some independents. It seemed like going into this that most of the people who ran in competitive races that made election denial or election anything, whatever you want to call it, that made 2020 a big part of their platform, they seem to have lost, whether it was Blake Masters or Kerry Lake or Doug Mastriano. I think the Washington Post put out an article in May where they highlighted 9 races where whoever the winner is could have a significant impact on how the 2024 election is run. And in these 9 races, there is like somebody who questioned the results of the 2020 election on the ballot. Every single one of them ended up losing. 0 out of 9 of them ended up losing. Like all of them ended up losing. It was, I think it's just not good if you're in a safe red district, then there's no political consequences. But if you need to win independence, like it's just not a winner.
I mean, yeah, I think there's obviously some truth to that, but then you look at like Dr. Oz. Like Dr. Oz was not some big like 2020 was stolen kind of guy, and he lost to Fetterman, who's one of the most joke candidates I've ever seen in my life. So like, I think another big explanation is that there's obviously a lot of Americans out there that are hardcore partisan Democrats. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. They'll vote blue. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the candidates are. It doesn't matter who the issues are. We've just got a lot of Americans that are just hardcore partisan leftist atheist Democrats, and they'll vote. Doesn't matter who they're voting. Doesn't matter how bad the economy gets. Doesn't matter how bad our lives get. Doesn't matter, and nothing matters. They're going to vote Democrat, and that's I think where we are in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, I think in the John Fetterman race, I mean, John Fetterman, it wasn't even like a close race. It was like I mean, it wasn't like a landslide or anything, but it wasn't close either, right? He won by like 6 or 7 points, I think, at the end of it. I forget exactly how many points he won by. And I mean, they announced it the night of. It wasn't like Blake Masters and Mark or Kerry Lake and Katie Hobbs. Like he won the night of. And it was in Pennsylvania. This is a state that has, I believe, gone to Trump before. So that means that there are at least people who did vote for Donald Trump who ended up flipping and voting for John Fetterman. So
or didn't vote at all. Didn't turn out. You
could say that, but John Fetterman did win independence in the Pennsylvania election. Do you want to know what was a really strange exit poll to me? I don't know if you saw like a lot of the Dr. Oz ads going into the election, but a lot of it kind of concentrated on this idea that like, John Fetterman is like a Bernie Sanders Democrat, which he is. John Fetterman is a Bernie Sanders style Democrat. He's actually, I would even point to like the type of Democrat that I personally am like. And Dr. Oz spent a lot, Doc Hollywood, whatever you want to call him, spent a lot of time concentrating on like the idea that John Fetterman is like a hardcore like radical. And the exit polling that I saw actually saw that it was very slight. It was like by 2 points that more people actually thought that Dr. Oz was more radical than Fetterman, which was a crazy poll to me. I didn't expect that leaving the election. Why do you think that there was like this perception of Dr. Oz as a radical in some way?
Because the Democrats and the media and the establishment apparatus and everybody loves to push lies, and a lot of people fall for it. And Dr. Oz was from New Jersey. I mean, that's another big reason he lost is he's freaking from New Jersey. Like that's, you can't, hard to take great job. We won, a Bernie Sanders style Democrat won. Great job. This must mean independents love Bernie. No, people voted against him because Dr. Oz is from New Jersey. He's not from Pennsylvania.
Well, I will say exit polling did indicate, I think it was 54% of Pennsylvanians thought that Dr. Oz was not Pennsylvanian enough to lead Pennsylvania or be a senator in Pennsylvania, which is just a crushing poll. I would feel like carpetbagging is just generally never I think an amazingly smart campaign strategy if it's in a competitive district. I mean, if you do it in like plus 30 blue or plus 30 red and you're a Republican, Democrat, like in each, obviously, then it doesn't matter because you're gonna win no matter what. But if you're running in somewhere like Pennsylvania, it was just like a bad. Dr. Oz was just a bad candidate. He just was not the person for the role. And I would I would also say that I think his Hollywood aesthetic, kind of his like old like history in media, I think a lot of people thought it would end up helping him. I think it ended up hurting him in the campaign. I mean, Fetterman was pretty strong in this idea that he's like Doc Hollywood, you know? He's not from here. He's from New Jersey. We got Snooki to read ads for him. He sold all these supplements. He's not for you. This is just like his next thing, right? Where John Fetterman, I mean, he wears like shorts and hoodies. He's like this big guy. He's authentic. He's got his zip code tattooed on his arm. I mean, you can say a lot of things about John Fetterman. He's an authentic guy. He comes off as extremely authentic. It's something that's very difficult for politicians to capture. It was actually weird seeing him in a suit after he won. I felt uncomfortable.
Right.
Would you say that that was part of the reason Fetterman won, was because he came off as authentic?
Yeah, I'm sure some people thought he was authentic. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
like, I wouldn't think that's like a major reason. Like, he could barely talk. He barely campaigned. I don't know.
I mean, isn't that, I mean, and I mean this in the nicest way possible. Isn't it kind of a little sad that Dr. Oz lost to someone who had a stroke mid-campaign? Like, it's supposed to be a competitive seat, and his opponent had a stroke. We saw him on the debate stage. It was not a great performance.
No, it's pathetic. No, that was the most pathetic debate I'd ever seen in my life. No, I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I think, so why do you, if it was like a pathetic debate performance, what does that say about Dr. Oz?
It says that he's from New Jersey, and people aren't going to vote for a guy from New Jersey.
You don't, I mean, we could say it was just that, but I don't think it was just that either, because polls did change.
I don't think none of this stuff is just any of this stuff. These are very, very complex reasons. There's a million different reasons why a million people voted the way they did. But I mean, obviously Republicans did good enough to win the House. They won the House. They fired Nancy Pelosi. There's a huge victory. Ron DeSantis had a blowout, massive win in Florida. Republicans did very, very well in New York, in House races in New York. So it's not like this was some like, oh my gosh, the complete defeat. No, the Republicans won the House. We're taking the House back.
They did get the House. They're going to be able to launch investigations. They can compel testimony. We're going to finally get to the bottom of Hunter Biden. Finally, we're gonna investigate him. It's about time.
I don't think there's going to be any Hunter Biden investigations. There's going to be a bunch of Joe Biden investigations.
I thought they were going to investigate Hunter Biden. I thought that was something.
No, they're not. They're not. There's not going to be any Hunter Biden investigation. It's all about Joe Biden.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought the idea was like by investigating Hunter Biden, they can find out information about Joe Biden's supposed business dealings.
Well, Joe Biden we know for a fact that Joe Biden lied to the American people, that he says he didn't know about Hunter Biden's business dealings. And we've got evidence and documents that show that Joe Biden was actually getting money from Hunter Biden. So the investigations of Joe Biden.
We know that he knew about all of his business dealings.
Yeah, we've got like pictures of like Joe Biden like on the golf course, like glad handing with Hunter's business officials.
Really? Could I see this picture?
Yeah, you've never seen any of that stuff?
No, I haven't.
You want me to like send it to you right now or what?
Well, you can send it to me after if you want to send it right now.
I mean, I just have to find it.
Okay, that's fine.
If you want to see it, but
I'm curious because as far as I'm aware and from what I've read, there's no evidence really tying Joe Biden to the vast majority of like Hunter Biden's business dealings. Which a lot of them are pretty wild, especially when it comes to like the gifts he got from like Chinese businessmen. But as far as I was aware, Joe Biden wasn't really aware of a lot of the goings-ons of what was happening. That's what I read in the Post and some other articles. If that's changed and there's been some new evidence to come to light, then I'm happy to change my mind. I did a video on the Hunter Biden stuff, I think a few months ago. So if there's been new information that's come out since then obviously I'm willing to change my mind. But I wanted to talk to you specifically about I guess we could go through like each election, but I wanted to talk to you specifically about this, like about Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, because I want to get perspectives from people within the Republican Party out than like me just grandstanding as a liberal about it. How do you view going into 2024? You know, you voted for Trump. You were a big, you were a big Trump supporter. Trump. A lot of people are pinning the failures of the midterms on Donald Trump. Do you think he bears any responsibility?
Well, I mean, sort of, yeah. I think sort of the way he's handled 2020 has not been super helpful.
Do you think he?
But I wouldn't like blame. I wouldn't like blame Donald Trump that the Republicans lost. I would blame sort of the Democrats lying and the media lying and horrible education system and low voter turnout and a bunch of other reasons that Republicans lost. I wouldn't blame Trump.
I mean, when I looked at 2016 when Hillary lost, right? I remember listening to like, the Russia stuff and like a lot of the things. And there was the Internet Research Agency, but a lot of the allegations that were made didn't end up coming to fruition, right? And I felt like a lot of that ended up just being kind of like deviating from the fact that Hillary just didn't really run a good campaign. She kind of treated it like she had it in the bag, and she just wasn't a good candidate. And I felt like a lot of people wanted to kind of ignore the mistakes the Democrats made and kind of like, point in the other direction. Like, it wasn't us, it was the Russians. It wasn't us, it was this. It wasn't us, it was that. And I fear, well, actually, I don't fear, because I don't really care if they make a strategic mistake because I'm not a Republican. But if I was a Republican, I would be kind of a little bit fearful that the adjustments wouldn't be made after this election if Donald Trump ended up being the nominee in 2024. Because Donald Trump, I think a lot of the stuff, definitely the 2020 stuff, and the candidates he ended up choosing, which were just not good candidates. Doc Hollywood's a great example of that. If he continues to engage in that type of behavior, it just seems like he's not the right man to lead a political movement if you actually like want to win a general. Because it doesn't seem like his agenda when it comes to like 2020 is very appealing to Americans. Maybe Ron DeSantis is more appealing, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe, do you think Donald Trump, it's time for him to take a step down?
Well, to be clear, I don't know if you actually watched Donald Trump's announcement speech, but one thing that I took away from the Trump 2024 announcement speech is he didn't say one word about 2020, not one word about 2020 being stolen and us needing to fix 2020. Not a word about it in over an hour-long announcement speech, which I thought was a pretty big change for Donald Trump. And so I think it remains to be seen what kind of campaign he runs, what kind of sort of vision he has for 2024. So I mean, if Donald Trump was going to run his 2024 campaign by going around and saying, 2020 was stolen, we need to fix 2020, and we need to decertify the 2020 election and shit like that, then, yeah, I don't think that's smart politically. But no, there's no evidence that that's what he's going to do.
Did you see his speech in reaction to the special counsel investigation into him?
I don't think so, no.
So the attorney general, since Donald Trump's running again, has decided to choose a special counsel to like do the investigation. He chose like the most bland person imaginable. It doesn't really matter. But Donald Trump did a speech reacting to this, and in the speech he did do some of those like, oh, it was stolen, oh, we got the voting machine problems, he started to engage in a little bit of that. It wasn't the main theme of his speech, but I feel like it's almost inevitable that this stuff kind of trickles out of his mouth. He's been making claims about like elections since that were not true since 2015. I find it hard to believe he's going to change his tune after like a solid 7 years of making these claims about elections.
Yeah, and if that's what he does, then the American people or the Republican primary voters will get to vote in the primaries, and we'll get to choose who we want to lead the party.
Do you think any Republican would be brave enough to go against Trump, considering how much he's decimated his political opponents?
Oh, there definitely will. I mean, I think Mike Pence is going to run. I think Mike Pompeo is going to run. Ted Cruz maybe runs. I'm not convinced that Ron DeSantis is going to run. Maybe he will. But he might. So yeah, there'll be a whole bunch of Republicans. I mean, the Republicans will end up having, 15 or 20, top tier AAA presidential candidates, and the Democrats will have Joe Biden. So I'm looking
think-
forward to it.
Do you think people are sick of Trump?
I mean, obviously Democrats are sick of him. I don't think Republicans are. No.
What about independents? Because like you can like Republicans will like Trump till the end of the day, but Republicans alone don't win elections, right? Like you need to get independents.
Well, they actually do if you actually turn out. I mean, elections are mostly determined not by who the independents vote for, but rather which base actually turns out and votes. When you've got turnout in the 60%, 70% range, that's a lot of people that are not voting.
Yeah, I would certainly say that, but I just find it hard to believe that they would be able to make up for enough turnout to just ignore independents, because it feels like independents they were pretty decisive in winning the victory in Virginia for Republicans and Glenn Youngkin. They seemed to be pretty important when it came to every race in this midterm, whether it was in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, like every single race. The only place it didn't really matter seemed to be Florida. Even the victories that Republicans picked up outside of Florida, like in New York and places in California, it was places where they were able to win over independents. So if like you're gonna run a candidate in 2024 that's just not good with independents, it just feels like a losing strategy. And if it's a losing strategy, I would want them to do it, to be clear.
I mean, I never suggested or said that we should ignore independence. I just said that I don't think this is like talking point and trope about independence are the most important thing is necessarily true. The independents are going to do what they're going to do. For independents, it's going to come down to who the choice is. If it's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, I feel comfortable in that situation.
You feel comfortable in that situation, really?
Yes.
Wow. I really disagree with that. I think, personally, I want it to be Donald Trump to be the nominee for the Republicans. Democrats tried this strategy this election where they had a few candidates that were a little cuckoo on the right side that they wanted to run against, because they were like, if we run against a crazy person, it's going to be easier to win. Now, a lot of people were very scared about this strategy because they kind of saw it. They remember 2016 and they're like, isn't this just Donald Trump all over again? But then what ended up happening is every election they ended up entailing that strategy in competitive races, they ended up winning. And so thinking that Donald Trump hasn't really regained too much favorability in polling since he's left office, and that the candidates he's choosing like didn't really perform too well when it came to any of the really competitive races, and the tunes that he's singing that people are getting sick of, I just don't understand how he would perform well in a general election moving forward unless the political landscape drastically changed.
Well, Trump actually has. I mean, his numbers have been pretty steady, and it's not like right now Trump's favorable is at 40 and unfavorable 54. Which is not great, but it's a lot better than. I mean, it's Kamala Harris is even worse. Her favorable is 36, unfavorable 51. So, and Joe Biden's at 43 and 52. They're all very, very close. That's all within the margin of error.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're not in power and you want to run against the incumbent president of the United States, Joe Biden, and he has a slightly better or equal approval rating to you, and you're like at 40, like I feel like Ron DeSantis just feels like the smarter choice, right? Like his favorability is much higher than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only person who we know can lose to Joe Biden because he has lost to Joe Biden. So I mean, like, again, personally, I'm not saying this to dissuade you from like supporting Donald Trump or whatever. I'm saying this as in I want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee in 2024. Because I think Joe Biden has proven he can beat him before, so I'm like, okay, he probably beat him again. And Donald Trump's position hasn't really improved as much since the 2020 election.
I think there's a strong case to be made for Ron. I loved Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis would destroy Joe Biden. I'm a huge Ron DeSantis fan. I totally support Ron DeSantis.
Again, over Donald Trump?
I support them both. I like them both.
Well, you would pick one, right? Like for me, like I would pick a lot of people over. Well, I mean,
the other thing that I think
you would pick them, right?
What?
if the primary was to happen, you would vote for one of them, right?
When I go vote in like June when the primary is over, sure, I'll pick one then at that point. But the other thing I think your sort of analysis sort of misses is this idea that like whatever like the fact that Donald Trump's like favorability rating or whatever is low because the people have lied about him and smeared him and attacked him and made him into the worst person on earth, like that's all going to happen to this whoever the Republicans choose. So like to think that like, oh my gosh, Trump is like this uniquely bad Republican. The only reason you think that Trump is like uniquely bad is because that's what the media and the establishment and Hollywood and universities and the whole establishment, they've all been saying that and trying to destroy Trump for 10 years now, almost, or 8 years now. And if it's a different, if a different Republican ends up being the nominee and is the leader of the Republic, they're going to do the same thing to him, and you're going to be sitting here saying the exact same things about whoever the Republican nominee is. So I don't think that there's anything unique about Trump in that, because it's like they're gonna. If the media and the Democrats are saying Trump is the most evil person right now, well, that's because he's the leader of the Republican Party. If there's a different leader of the Republican Party, then they're going to say that person is the most evil person ever, the most horrible person ever. Oh my God, they're so horrible, horrible, horrible. And you'll be saying that about a different person. So I don't think that's unique.